Hey everyone, welcome to this explainer. Today we're diving into something you've probably eaten, but honestly, maybe never really analyzed. We're talking about the Chicago deep dish pizza, and we're not just looking at it as a delicious meal. Oh no. Our sources actually describe this thing as a structurally inverted high-mass culinary matrix. So yeah, this isn't just baking, folks. We are talking about rigorous structural engineering. Now, the absolute core engineering challenge of this massive deep dish payload, it's moisture saturation. I mean, if you've ever baked literally anything, you know the risks here, right? When you combine raw dough with an absolute mountain of wet, heavy ingredients, and then subject the whole shebang to a prolonged bake time, well, by all conventional logic, it should just degrade into a soggy, burned paste. So how on earth does it survive this 40-minute crucible? Okay, let's dive right into this. Here's our blueprint for today. We'll start with the engineering challenge, move into the historical blueprint, analyze the carbohydrate foundation, deconstruct the inverted assembly, look at the thermodynamic execution, and finally, we'll tackle the great debate, pizza or casserole. Section 1. The engineering challenge, and specifically, managing the payload. To really understand this culinary matrix, we first have to recognize the sheer scale of what we're dealing with. This dish presents a massive payload. We're talking complex carbohydrates, complete proteins, and heavy dairy lipids. Actually, our source points out that this serves as an exceptionally dense caloric source. Like, it's literally used for fueling recovery in rigorous training splits. And because of this massive payload, it requires a seriously prolonged 30 to 45-minute bake time inside a high-sided pan. For it to emerge intact, the internal structure has to be meticulously engineered so it can survive that intense oven time without totally collapsing. All right, moving on to Section 2, the historical blueprint, or what we can call Protocol Alpha. So, the invention of the deep dish style is universally traced back to Chicago in 1943 at a place called Pizzeria Uno. But here's where it gets a little messy. As historical records show, commercial interests heavily bias who actually gets the credit for the original recipe. On one side, you've got the corporate narrative crediting entrepreneurs Ike Sewell and Rickard Ricardo as the founders. But on the other side, there's significant historical evidence pointing to a family narrative, which suggests the recipe was actually formulated by their chef, Rudy Milani Sr. Now, we aren't here to take sides on who definitively created it. We're just looking at the facts impartially. But it is absolutely crucial to understand just how disputed these origins remain today. Okay, Section 3, the Carbohydrate Foundation, Protocol Beta. A huge, defining feature of this structure is a very specific hydration level. We're talking 50 to 55%. See, deep dish dough is fundamentally different from your standard Neapolitan pizza dough. It's not designed for elasticity, and trust me, it is definitely not designed for aerial spinning. No way. It requires a much lower, intentionally reduced water content just to maintain its rigid structural foundation. Conversely, while the water is low, this matrix requires an exceptionally high lipid content. We're talking about incorporating corn oil or butter at upwards of 15 to 20% baker's percentage. That high fat ratio is absolutely crucial for building what effectively acts as a structural retaining wall for the entire pizza. And the way that fat is handled, that's through a process called lamination. Basically, lamination is the process of folding fat directly into the dough to create this short, almost biscuit-like crumb. This specific texture provides immense mechanical strength. It acts as a physical barrier against all those dense, heavy toppings we talked about earlier. Because of this, the dough is never ever tossed. Instead, it's pressed directly into a high-sided, heavily oiled steel or cast iron pan and literally pulled up the sides to establish that retaining wall. Which brings us to Section 4, the Inverted Assembly Protocol Gamma. Now, think about this. If a deep dish pizza were constructed like a standard pizza, dough, then sauce, then cheese, that massive 40-minute bake time would cause the moisture from the sauce to completely dissolve the dough base. And the exposed cheese on top, it would just carbonize and burn to a crisp. So, to prevent this total structural failure, the architecture has to rely on this highly counterintuitive inverted logic. It consists of 4 precise layers. Okay, layer 1, we call this the lipid shield. Thick slices of low-moisture mozzarella cheese are layered directly onto the raw dough base. This first layer is absolutely vital because it acts as a hydrophobic barrier. It essentially blocks any downward moisture from seeping into our carefully laminated crust. Next up, we add layer 2, the protein matrix. This is strategically layered directly above the cheese. This matrix consists of raw or par-cooked meats. And traditionally, as many Chicagoans already know, this is often a solid, uniform disc of bulk Italian sausage, right along with your vegetables. It's dense, it's heavy, and it sits perfectly protected on top of that lipid shield. Then comes layer 3, which is the aqueous roof. A thick layer of crushed, chunky tomatoes is applied next. Now, our source really emphasizes this. They must be chunky, absolutely not a smooth puree. The pure genius of the aqueous roof is that the moisture from the tomatoes evaporates upward during baking. This process actively protects the lower layers from burning while simultaneously concentrating that rich tomato flavor down below. And finally, layer 4, the aromatic finish. This is just a targeted dusting of grated Parmesan or Pecorino Romano, applied right to the very top. It's designed specifically to achieve a beautiful Maillard browning effect during that really long bake in the oven. All right, section 5, thermodynamic execution, protocol delta. So the fully assembled matrix is now ready to undergo its final transformation in a highly intense baking environment. We're talking 425 degrees Fahrenheit, or about 218 degrees Celsius. This is the precise, prolonged ambient heat required for this whole execution to actually work. Now, the crucial point here is the phase change that occurs inside the oven over those 35 to 45 minutes. The high thermal mass of the cast iron pan provides this intense conductive heat. And remember that really high lipid content we talked about earlier? Well, because of that, this conductive heat literally fries the crust in its own oil, right there inside the pan. It's incredible. Meanwhile, the prolonged ambient heat ensures the internal proteins are fully cooked, and that bottom layer of cheese undergoes a complete phase change, melting perfectly without burning. Honestly, it is a total masterpiece of thermodynamic balance. Finally, section 6, pizza or casserole, the Red Team report. We can't wrap up without addressing the ultimate ontological debate surrounding this dish. The primary culinary counter-analysis comes from critics, most notably hardcore proponents of New York-style pizza. They present a sort of devil's advocate argument. They argue that because of its immense depth, the massive ingredient mass, the absolute requirement of a fork and knife to even eat it, and the prolonged baking time in a high-sided vessel, well, they say a deep dish is technically just a baked cheese and tomato casserole that merely utilizes a bread crust. To them, it is fundamentally not a true pizza. Now, we're just neutrally presenting the arguments here, of course. Which leaves us with this final thought. We've completely deconstructed the meticulously laminated dough, we've looked at the ingenious inverted assembly to control moisture, and we've explored the intense thermodynamic phase changes it undergoes in the oven. So, based on its complex architecture, its massive payload, and its highly engineered execution, where do you draw the ontological line? Is this the ultimate evolution of pizza, or just a brilliant casserole in disguise? I'll let you be the judge of that. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer today, and remember to keep questioning the science behind the things we consume every single day.